Before we begin this incredible tale, please hit that like button if you're ready for an emotional journey. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Your support means everything to us. The bitter winds of the northern fjords carried more than snow that fateful morning. They carried the sound of desperate weeping that would change two lives forever. Thorstein Ironheart, a seasoned warrior of the Northlands, had been tracking a group of mysterious hunters through the treacherous mountain passes for 3 days. These weren't ordinary men seeking deer or elk. Their tracks told a different story, one that spoke of greed and ancient magic. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine snow as Thorstein crested a rocky outcropping, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Below him, a scene of devastation unfolded that made his weather heart clench with unexpected sorrow. The remains of what had once been a magnificent creature lay scattered across the clearing, scales that shimmer like emeralds even in death, and wings that had once commanded the skies now torn and lifeless. But it was a sound that drew him closer, a pitiful crying that seemed to come from beneath the fallen giant. There, huddled against the warmth of his mother's still form, was the smallest dragon Thorstein had ever seen. No larger than a newborn calf, the little creature's scales were a brilliant silver blue, and his eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes, were filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds in the morning light. "Will you leave me alone forever?" the young dragon asked in the old tongue, his voice barely a whisper above the howling wind. The words hit Thorstein like a physical blow, for he understood the ancient language that few humans still remembered. Thorstein approached slowly, his massive frame moving with surprising gentleness as he knelt beside the grieving creature. The hunter tracks around the clearing told the complete story. These men had come for the dragon's hide, her heart, her scales, all valuable beyond measure in the markets of distant lands. They had taken what they came for and left this innocent soul to perish in the wilderness. "Not while I breathe, little one," Thorstein replied in the same ancient tongue, extending a calloused hand toward the trembling dragon. "Not while there is strength in these old bones." The dragon looked up at him with eyes that held intelligence far beyond his apparent age. In that moment, something profound passed between them, an understanding that transcended species, a bond forged in shared loss and mutual recognition of kindness. The little dragon, whom Thorstein would come to call Skywing, slowly crept forward and allowed the Viking's warm hand to stroke his shining scales. For the next several hours, Thorstein worked tirelessly to create a proper resting place for Skywing's mother. Using his axe and bare hands, he cleared away snow and stones, creating a cairn that would honor the fallen dragon's memory. Skywing watched every movement, occasionally adding small stones with his tiny claws, understanding instinctively that this human was showing respect to his family. As the day wore on, the temperature continued to drop, and Thorstein realized that time was running short. The little dragon was clearly weakened from cold and grief, and the approaching storm clouds promised a blizzard that could last for days. Making a decision that would alter the course of both their lives, Thorstein gently scooped Skywing into his thick fur cloak. "Come, young friend," he said softly. "Let's go home." The journey back to Thorstein's village took 2 days through increasingly harsh weather. During this time, the unlikely pair began to truly know each other. Skywing, despite his youth, possessed remarkable intelligence and an intuitive understanding of emotions that amazed the veteran warrior. When Thorstein's old wounds ached from the cold, the little dragon would curl against his chest, providing warmth that seemed to come from some inner fire. In return, Thorstein shared his food, his warmth, and most importantly, his stories. As they sheltered in caves during the worst of the storm, he told Skywing tales of great adventures, of honor and friendship, of the bonds that could form between the most unlikely companions. The dragon listened with rapt attention, his silver blue eyes reflecting the firelight as he absorbed every word. "In my culture," Thorstein explained one evening as they shared a meal of dried fish and hardtack, "we believe that family is not just born, it can be chosen. You have lost your birth family, as have I, but perhaps we can choose each other." Skywing tilted his head thoughtfully, then nuzzled against Thorstein's weathered cheek in response. It was a gesture of acceptance and affection that needed no translation. When they finally reached Thorstein's village, nestled in a valley between towering peaks, the reception was mixed. Some villagers feared the dragon, remembering old stories of destruction and fire. Others were curious about this unprecedented partnership. But Thorstein's reputation as an honorable man carried weight, and his passionate defense of the young dragon gradually won over the skeptics. "This creature has done no harm," he declared at the village council meeting. "Skywing perched calmly on his shoulder. He seeks only the same things we all do: safety, companionship, and a place to call home. I give my word that he will be raised with honor and respect for all life." Old Ingrid, the village wise woman, approached them after the meeting. She studied Skywing with knowing eyes, then nodded slowly. "I see great potential in this one," she said quietly, "but also great danger, not from evil intent, but from the power that flows in his blood. Raise him well, Thorstein Ironheart, for the choices made in his youth will echo through eternity." As winter deepened, Thorstein transformed his modest stone dwelling to accommodate his unusual companion. He built a special alcove near the hearth where Skywing could sleep comfortably, surrounded by soft furs and warmed by the constant fire. He crafted toys and puzzles to challenge the dragon's growing mind, and most importantly, he established routines and boundaries that would help shape the young creature's character. Each morning, they would rise before dawn and venture into forest for what Thorstein called lessons in being. These weren't formal training sessions, but rather opportunities for Skywing to explore his natural abilities while learning important values. When the little dragon discovered he could breathe small puffs of flame, Thorstein taught him the importance of control and responsibility. "Power without wisdom is destruction," he would say, watching as Skywing carefully lit kindling for their campfires. "True strength comes from knowing when not to use your abilities, not from displaying them carelessly." The dragon absorbed these lessons eagerly, his respect and affection for his adoptive father growing stronger with each passing day. Villagers began to notice changes in both of them. Thorstein smiled more often, and there was a new lightness in his step that hadn't been there since his wife's passing years before. Skywing, meanwhile, developed a gentle nature and protective instinct that endeared him to the children and eventually won over even the most skeptical adults. By spring's arrival, the bond between the Viking and the dragon had become legendary throughout the region. Travelers would come specifically to witness this remarkable friendship, and bards began composing songs about the warrior who tamed the dragon not with sword or chain, but with love and patience. 5 years had passed since that fateful day in the snow, and the changes in both Thorstein and Skywing were remarkable to behold. The once tiny dragon now stood as tall as a horse at the shoulder, his silver-blue scales having deepened to a magnificent royal blue with edges that caught the light like polished steel. His wings, when fully extended, could span the width of 3 longships, and his presence commanded respect throughout the village and beyond. Thorstein, now in his 50th year, carried himself with even greater pride than before. The joy of raising Skywing had renewed his spirit in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. Gray now streaked his dark hair, and new lines around his eyes spoke of countless hours spent laughing at his companions' antics and marveling at his rapid growth. Their daily routines had evolved with Skywing's increasing size and capabilities. Each morning found them by the fjord, where the dragon had learned to fish with remarkable skill, his keen eyes spotting movement beneath the water's surface from great heights. Thorstein would watch with paternal pride as Skywing dove gracefully into the icy waters, emerging with enough fish to feed half the village. "Remember, my friend," Thorstein would call out as Skywing prepared for another dive, "take only what we need. The sea provides for all, but only if we respect her gifts." These lessons in restraint and gratitude had become second nature to the young dragon, who had grown into a creature of remarkable wisdom and compassion under Thorstein's guidance. When harsh winter struck the region, Skywing would use his abilities to help struggling families, carefully melting ice from wells and providing warmth during the coldest nights. The bond between them had transcended the typical relationship between human and animal, evolving into something that resembled brotherhood more than ownership. They seemed to communicate through looks and gestures as much as words, their understanding of each other so complete that villagers often joked they shared the same mind. One particular morning in late spring brought an event that would test the strength of their bond. A messenger arrived from a neighboring village of Ironhold, bearing news that struck fear into every heart. A clan of dragon hunters, led by a ruthless man known as Grim the Collector, had been systematically tracking and capturing dragons throughout the northern territories. "They seek the young one," the messenger warned, gesturing toward Skywing, who had been playfully chasing butterflies nearby. Word of the blue dragon has spread far and wide. Grimm believes that one raised among humans would be easier to capture than a wild beast. The news sent a chill through Torstein that had nothing to do with the mountain air. He had always known this day might come, but the reality of the threat felt like a physical blow. That evening, as he and Skywing sat by their favorite spot overlooking the valley, he shared the difficult truth. "We face a choice, my brother," Torstein said, using the term of endearment that had developed naturally between them over the years. "You could fly far from here, beyond the reach of these hunters. Live free in high mountains where no human could follow." Skywing's response was immediate and firm. "And leave you to face them alone? Never. We are family, Torstein Ironheart. Family protects family." The dragon's words, spoken in the ancient tongue that had become their private language, filled Torstein with both pride and terror. He recognized the same stubborn loyalty in Skywing that had defined his own life, the same unwillingness to abandon those he loved regardless of cost. For the next several weeks, they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Torstein reached out to old allies, calling in favors from warriors he had served alongside in his younger days. Meanwhile, Skywing worked with the village hunters to establish defensive positions and escape routes should the worst occur. The dragon's natural abilities had grown tremendously, but more importantly, his wisdom and strategic thinking had developed beyond what anyone thought possible. He could anticipate enemy movements, understand complex battle plans, and coordinate multiple groups of defenders with the skill of a seasoned general. "Your mind amazes me," Torstein confided one evening as they reviewed their defensive preparations. "Sometimes I forget you're still so young." "Age is not measured only in years," Skywing replied thoughtfully. "You have given me the knowledge of generations, the wisdom of your people combined with the instincts of mine. In that way, I am both ancient and young." When Grimm's hunters finally arrived, they came not with the small group the villagers had expected, but with an army of over 50 men, armed with nets, chains, and weapons designed specifically for capturing dragons. Their leader rode at the front of the column, a scarred man whose eyes held no warmth or mercy. The siege that followed lasted 3 days and tested everyone to their limits. The hunters had clearly studied their prey well, employing tactics designed to separate Skywing from his human protectors. They used smoke to obscure vision, loud horns to disorient, and coordinated attacks that forced the dragon to choose between protecting the village and maintaining his own safety. Throughout it all, Torstein and Skywing fought as one, their bond allowing them to anticipate each other's actions and coordinate their responses with seamless precision. When the Viking strength began to flag, the dragon would provide cover and support. When Skywing found himself overwhelmed, Torstein would appear at his side with exactly the assistance needed. On the third night, as both sides paused to tend their wounds and plan their next moves, Torstein made a discovery that changed everything. While scouting the enemy camp, he overheard Grimm speaking with his lieutenants about their true purpose. "The blue one is valuable, yes," the hunter leader was saying, "but he is not the ultimate prize. The stories speak of his mother's heart, buried with her body in the high peaks. That single organ is worth more than a dozen live dragons." The realization hit Torstein like a thunderbolt. These men hadn't just come for Skywing. They were planning to desecrate his mother's grave, to steal the one thing that remained of the family the young dragon had lost. The insult and cruelty of it filled the Viking with a rage he hadn't felt in years. When he shared this intelligence with Skywing, the dragon's reaction was immediate and profound. For the first time since Torstein had known him, Skywing's eyes blazed with something approaching fury. But rather than let anger control him, the dragon channeled his emotions into determination. "Then we end this tomorrow," Skywing declared, "not just to protect ourselves, but to protect her memory, to show these desecrators that some things are sacred." The final battle began at dawn, with both sides committed to decisive action. But it was not the clash of arms that determined the outcome. It was the arrival of unexpected allies. The stories of Torstein and Skywing's friendship had spread throughout the region, inspiring other villages and even nomadic clans to join their cause. By midday, Grimm's hunters found themselves outnumbered and surrounded by a coalition of humans who had come to defend not just a dragon, but the principle that bonds of love transcend differences of species. Faced with overwhelming opposition and no possibility of victory, the hunters retreated, their leaders swearing vengeance but ultimately powerless to achieve it. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a new normal, but both Thorstein and Skywing had been changed by the experience. They had faced the possibility of losing each other and emerged even more devoted to their bond. The dragon's abilities continued to grow, but his character remained firmly rooted in the values his adoptive father had taught him. Yet beneath the surface of their joy, both felt the weight of time's passage. Skywing was approaching the age when dragons typically reach full maturity, and with that maturity came instincts and drives that neither of them fully understood. Sometimes, particularly during the changing of seasons, Skywing would become restless and distant, as if listening to voices only he could hear. "What troubles you, my brother?" Thorstein asked one such evening, noting the dragon's unusual quietude. "I dream sometimes," Skywing replied slowly. "Dreams of flying higher than clouds, of places I have never seen, but somehow know. Dreams of other things. Things I cannot explain." Thorstein nodded, understanding more than he let on. He had read the old books, spoken with the wise women, and knew that the time was approaching when Skywing would face his greatest test, the awakening of instincts that predated human civilization itself. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. As they sat together watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, neither spoke of the challenges ahead. Instead, they simply enjoyed the peace of the moment. Two souls who had found family in the most unlikely circumstances, their bond unshakable despite the uncertainties that lay ahead. Years passed like seasons changing, and the bond between Thorstein and Skywing only grew stronger. The dragon, now magnificent in his full maturity, had become protector not just of their village, but of the entire region. His wisdom, shaped by Thorstein's teachings, made him a mediator in disputes and a guardian of the innocent. Thorstein, though growing older, found renewed purpose in documenting their adventures and the lessons they had learned together. His writings would later become treasured texts, teaching future generations about the power of unconditional love and acceptance. The hunters never returned, but their story spread far and wide, not as a tale of conquest, but as a legend of friendship. Bards sang of the Viking who chose love over fear, and the dragon who chose family over instinct. In the end, their greatest victory was not over enemies or adversity, but over the barriers that separate different beings. They proved that family is not defined by blood or species, but by the choices we make and the love we share. And in the mountains where it all began, beside the cairn of stones that marked a mother's rest, fresh flowers appeared each spring, placed there by grateful villagers who remembered the dragon who chose to protect rather than destroy, and the warrior who saw beyond scales and wings to the gentle heart within. Their story became more than a legend. It became a promise that love, patience, and understanding can overcome even the greatest differences, creating bonds that last beyond a single lifetime. What did you think of this emotional journey? Don't forget to like this video if it touched your heart, subscribe for more incredible stories, and share in the comments where you're watching from. We love connecting with our global family of story lovers.